This video isn't about the Fantano and Halsey drama, but it does exist because of it and because of how categorically embarrassing it was for everyone involved. I had a different intro for this written, but then Fantano posted his response, I guess you'd call it, to Halsey's tweets, which I'll show here. And after watching, I gotta say, I think the real lesson here is just don't fight with people publicly, online. It's embarrassing. I know people have been trying to relive the Drake and Kendrick beef for like the past year, but the thing about that beef is that it was extremely embarrassing a lot of the time. The real reason this video exists is because no one, not the artist, not the fans, not even the art critic himself, seems to even understand what the point of criticism is. Do you want my actual opinion of the Fantano video itself? I mean, the man is undeniably a little bit of a tool and, dare I say, a misogynist. It's okay, everybody is, but his consistent dismissal of experimental art by women is just pretty undeniable. Still, I always grew up thinking that artists getting involved in their own discourse like Halsey did was a bit of a faux pas. Artists weren't supposed to directly respond to critics in the same way that critics weren't supposed to directly shout their insults at the artist they covered. Don't get me wrong, artists should be aware of critical consensus and how their art is being received. They should maybe even keep track of which critics give them the most helpful or friendly reviews. I mean, that certainly pays off when you have to pick which interviews to show up to. But arguing in the comments of a Rolling Stone smear is a clear violation of the artist-critic contract because, frankly, reviews are not for you. Critique is for the artist, but criticism is for the audience. Critique is when you get your friends, peers, classmates, or teachers together to make them look at your art for the exclusive purpose of giving you feedback. People can be better or worse at giving critique in the same way that they can be better or worse critics, and the people who are best at it will frame even the harshest indictments of your creations as questions that get you thinking about solutions. The focus is on trying to get you to realize what the ideal version of your project is, rather than strictly evaluating the quality of the final product. This description might make critique seem like inherently nicer or kinder than getting a review from a complete outsider, but I really promise you, it is not. For one thing, even if they're getting paid to do so, critics are electing to consume your artwork and aren't going to come in from the perspective of, why did you make me sit through this? If you're a musician, you want to make a good album. If you're a critic at, say, The Fader, you want to listen to a good album. So your goals are complementary in that way. If a critic has generally positive thoughts about your work, it might lead them to massage the rougher details out in the process of writing. Just like when you're crafting a narrative or a screenplay, clean, cohesive ideas make for much easier writing. It's much easier to write an article about how this album is really good than it is to write one that is the 100 failings of a fundamentally good product. But your friends who you cajoled to come over to your apartment, it doesn't matter if you serve the best cocktails in the world. If you annoy them at all, they have no compunction to be kind to you. Also, you are present and therefore capable of embarrassing yourself. Pop quiz for the artist in the audience. What is the ideal number of words for you to say during critique? 0. It's 0 words. There are 2 reasons for that. One, with enough time and effort, you can justify any creative decision. You no doubt had reasons to do all of the things you did while making your art, and I'm sure you could tell me at length about them, but it just doesn't matter in the face of the actual effect. 2, even if the note is completely off base and you have no intention of incorporating it, it's just a little bit embarrassing, right? Whining in front of everyone? Do what you must, but I have never said anything while receiving critique that I didn't later regret. Criticism, on the other hand, is a lot harder to define because it doesn't have the strict functionality of critique. Critics write reviews to celebrate things they love, hate on things they loathe, remember things they're nostalgic for but don't have that many strong opinions about. There isn't a universal goal or success state to work towards while writing. Likewise, people who consume criticism don't necessarily even know why they seek it out. We watch comedies to laugh, horror films to be scared, but why do we want to hear about other people's experiences of those things? One answer, the answer critics will give you, is that critics are tastemakers. You, the layperson, don't have time to listen to all 5 million records that come out every week and pick which ones are the most groundbreaking. We pay the critics to do the dirty work, find the diamonds in the rough, and tell us what's cool and what's lame. Critics keep track of trends, of cultural attitudes, micro scenes, chart success, box office draws, and movements of the studios, and they synthesize all of it together into a roadmap of the current cultural moment. This is criticism at its most functional and arguably most flawed. On one hand, if we approach reviews like this, there is a clear service to be provided. I want good music, or movies, or books, or comics, etc., and I have somebody more immersed in the art form ready to point me in the right direction. I know I use reviews like this, and honestly, I do think that all the best critics have some ability to synthesize or respond to the cultural context surrounding the work they cover. If you want a good example of what this looks like, Alphonse Pierre wrote a very earnest and agitated review of the new Chris Brown album this year. He spends some time gagging at the music itself, but also acknowledges his own role in its cultural reception. He talks about not wanting to be party to the laundering of Brown's reputation, the way fans and critics alike will glaze over his very well-documented and distressing history of violence against women anytime he has a radio hit. He also talks about the history of other critics taking stands against harmful people within the music industry, even when those opinions were very unpopular, and the value that he found in those reviews. Pierre gets a lot of shit for his occasionally outrageous music opinions, but I honestly thought this demonstrated a lot of awareness and sensitivity, not to mention formal skill. At the same time, though, this is the origin point of the snooty, out-of-touch critic trope. The critic, so invested in staying relevant, shuns the work actually relevant to real people's lives. Their taste becomes so elitist and determined by so many factors outside of the actual music that they have no ability to relate to the common man or woman. Or they. I mean, we all know what happened to the Carpenters. Clearly, critics do get it wrong, and when we entrust too much power into them, the results can be disastrous. We could spend a long time ruminating on the aforementioned idea of the people, the common man, the American public, and how that idea itself has been constructed to make arguments just as iconoclasm was constructed by critics. Oftentimes, the signifiers people point to identify out-of-touch critics is like an ability to appreciate art not from America, curiosity in historical context, ideas. I will take a pretentious blowhard over an anti-intellectual xenophobe any day of the week, but I will concede that affect can eclipse content, and when it does so, it renders the work, be that a review, a movie, whatever, completely null. A better approach to thinking about criticism, one that I feel should be adopted by critics and fans alike, is that it's just nonfiction writing. I read about people's experiences with art in the same way that I read about their experiences with grief, with love, with just going for a walk outside. Consuming art is a meaningful experience, and criticism, just like any art, is meant to communicate an experience. It is a mark on the wall of a cave saying, I was here, this is what happened to me. But that's the big umbrella answer. It is the starting point for how I got interested in criticism, but it still doesn't answer what makes for a good review. The feeling I get reading a fantastic Will Sloan entry on some obscure Canadian mumblecore film is very different than the feeling I get while reading a great memoir. Put more simply, what makes a good critic good? To answer that, I want to go back to something that Fantano said when he was responding to Halsey's tweets. The man claims that he is the most influential music critic of his generation. So, you know, is he? On one hand, yeah, of course he is. I mean, people talk about his reviews in real life. People who don't read The Fader or Pitchfork or The Rolling Stone watch Fantano videos. He is so synonymous with the idea of music journalism that online he has become shorthand for the concept of a critic. He can make a cameo in Nirvana, the band, the show, the movie, and everyone instantly gets the joke. And that's not even getting into the fact that a lot of his scores are like offhand biblical knowledge to any music fan my age. But while his scores are quoted and referenced all the time, when was the last time that somebody did that for any of the actual words in his reviews? People clown on the Pitchfork review for Kid A all the time, and for good reason, but every time they quote that iconically pretentious opening one-liner, they do so because it's stuck in their mind. It is a piece of language that they took with them after they finished the review. Could the same be said for any of Fantano's words? The more you think about it, the more this becomes the goal of art criticism. Put simply, will people remember your ideas when they're done consuming your work? You could even say this statement is doubly true, as it's a concern on both an artistic and a rhetorical level. Artistically speaking, the ideal review should provide beauty and enjoyment independent of the work being discussed. Rhetorically, when I watch something unrelated to your writing, I should be able to use your ideas to achieve greater understanding. This is why a critic doesn't need to have good taste to be a good writer. Todd in the Shadows has awful taste in music. Basically everything he likes, I hate, and vice versa. But I still religiously watch his videos because his understanding of cultural impacts is invaluable. I think about his concept of the delayed flop all the time when trying to demystify notorious flops. I vehemently disagree with Pauline Kael's review of Woman Under the Influence. But when she says that nothing the main character does is memorable because she simply does so much, it does communicate something of value to me. It makes me think about how often female characters are transformed into unknowable ciphers by their male writers who have no interest in their interiority. The use of a critic is in the tools that they provide. I don't want a banal evaluation of if something is binarily good or bad. I want to see the back of my head, or a view from your height, or a landscape turned upside down. I want to see something that would be impossible for me to see without you.